Galactic Council had stood for 14,000 years, 47 species, 900 colony worlds. A civilization built on order, diplomacy, and the careful balance of power among beings who had learned, sometimes painfully, that cooperation was preferable to annihilation. And then humanity arrived. Ambassador Qin stood in the center of the council chamber, a spherical room 300 meters across where representatives floated in gravity-neutral pods arranged in concentric rings. The architecture was designed to eliminate hierarchy, to make every voice equal. But Qin could feel the weight of every alien gaze upon her, and equality was the last thing in this room. The human colony on Verdant 3 will be abandoned, High Arbiter Kelnoth announced, his triforked tongue tasting the air with what Qin had learned to recognize as satisfaction. The system falls within Krillian territorial claims, predating your species' first crude attempts at faster-than-light travel by 6 centuries. Qin's jaw tightened. With respect, High Arbiter, 15,000 human civilians have lived on Verdant 3 for 22 years. We've built farms, schools, hospitals. We submitted our colonization claim through proper channels and received provisional approval. Provisional? Kelnoth interrupted, his hood flaring in the seraph equivalent of a dismissive wave. Subject to review. Subject to council authority. The Krillians have lodged a formal complaint. Their claim is older. The matter is settled. 15,000 people, Qin repeated, keeping her voice level despite the fury building in her chest. Where do you expect them to go? That is a human problem. This came from Ambassador Thex, the Krillian representative, her crystalline body refracting the chamber's ambient light into cold rainbows. We offered compensation. Relocation assistance. Your government rejected our generosity. You offered 30 credits per person and transport to a refugee station. More than adequate for a species that only achieved interstellar capability 40 years ago. Thex's tone carried the particular condescension that came from a civilization that had been traveling the stars for 3 millennia. Perhaps humanity expanded too quickly. Perhaps you need time to mature. The chamber filled with what Qin had learned was laughter. A dozen different species expressing amusement through chirps, subsonic rumbles, color shifts, and pheromone releases that her translator could only approximate. Qin looked around the chamber. At the Vex, insectoid beings who controlled the largest banking systems in known space. At the Murati, energy-based entities who served as the Council's peacekeepers. At the Draken hierarchy, reptilian warriors whose fleets numbered in the thousands. And at dozens of others, each ancient, each powerful, each utterly convinced of their superiority. I see, Qin said quietly. Good, Kelnoth said. Then we can move on to. I see that you've made your decision. I also see that you believe humanity will simply accept it. Qin's voice had changed, hardened into something that made several nearby ambassadors shift in their pods. You're wrong. The High Arbiter's hood flared wider. Are you threatening the Council? I'm informing you. You've given us 30 days to evacuate Verdant 3. I'm telling you we won't. Then the Krillian fleet will remove you by force. Then you'll discover something about humanity that 14,000 years of your civilization has made you forget. Kelnoth leaned forward, his obsidian eyes gleaming. And what is that, Ambassador? Qin met his gaze without flinching. That there are species in this galaxy who remember that civilization isn't inevitable. It's a choice. And when you take away every other choice. She paused, letting the silence stretch. Well, we know how to make different decisions. You would go to war? You who have 50 ships to our millions. You who haven't even mapped a tenth of explored space. Thex's laugh was like breaking glass. Your bravado is almost charming. War? Qin shook her head slowly. No, Ambassador Thex. You don't understand. When you have overwhelming force you can afford war. When you have rules and laws and 14,000 years of civilization, you can afford war. War is what happens between civilizations that are similar enough to negotiate afterwards. She touched the control panel on her wrist, and a holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. Earth, rotating slowly, blue and green and achingly beautiful. We're not similar enough to you. Not yet. We're younger. Cruder. We remember things you've forgotten. And if you force us out of Verdant 3, if you tell us that might makes right and ancient claims trump human lives, then you're not declaring war on humanity. Qin's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but in the acoustic perfection of the council chamber, every word carried clearly. You're reminding us that we're the prey species at the Council of Predators. And prey when cornered, when they have nothing left to lose. She smiled and there was no warmth in it. Prey don't fight wars. They fight for survival. Total. Absolute. By any means necessary. The chamber had gone completely silent. The silence in the council chamber lasted exactly 4 seconds before it erupted into chaos. Outrageous. Ambassador Thex's crystalline form blazed with angry red light. This is a direct threat against council authority. Order. High Arbiter Kelnatha's voice boomed through the chamber's amplification system, but the cacophony continued. Representatives shouted in a dozen languages, their translation feeds overlapping into incomprehensible noise. Chin stood motionless in the center of it all, her hands clasped behind her back, watching. Learning. She'd spent 6 months studying each of these species, their cultures, their histories, their wars. She knew exactly which nerve she'd struck. The Marathi representative, Executor Ven, finally brought order by releasing an electromagnetic pulse that caused every translator to briefly short out. In the blessed silence that followed, Kelnatha's hood had gone pale, the seraph equivalent of barely contained rage. Ambassador Chin, he said, each word carefully enunciated. You will clarify your statement. Now. Of course, High Arbiter. Chin's voice was perfectly calm, perfectly professional. I'm simply informing the Council that humanity will defend Verdant 3. By any means available to us. Against a Krillian battle fleet? Ambassador Thex's laugh had lost its musical quality. You have what, 3 ships in that system? Light cruisers if our intelligence is correct. We can have 20 dreadnoughts there in a week. I'm aware of the numerical disparity. Then you understand that resistance is suicide. No, Ambassador. I understand that conventional military resistance is impossible. Chin turned slowly, making eye contact with each council member in turn. Which is why we won't engage in conventional military resistance. Executor Ven's energy field flickered. Curiosity, Chen's briefing materials suggested. Explain. Humanity has been in space for 4 decades. We've built exactly 53 interstellar vessels. Our weapons technology is primitive compared to yours. Our understanding of hyperspace physics is rudimentary. In every measurable military metric, we are insignificant. Chen paused. But we've been fighting each other for 50,000 years. We've developed certain specializations. Specializations. The word came from Ambassador Crix of the Vex Collective, his mandibles clicking with what might have been anxiety. Asymmetric warfare. Guerrilla tactics. Terrorism, if you prefer the uglier word. Chen's expression didn't change. Methods that civilized species abandoned millennia ago, when they learned that total war costs more than it gains. But humanity remembers. We remember very well. You're threatening civilian targets. This from Ambassador Thorn of the Draken hierarchy, his reptilian features pulling into what his species considered a battle snarl. That violates every convention of civilized warfare. Does it? Chin pulled up another holographic display, this time showing the slums of the Krillian refugee stations, where displaced populations from a dozen species lived in squalor. Tell me, Ambassador Thorn, what do you call this? Verdant 3 has 0 military installations. It's 15,000 farmers, teachers, children. When the Krillian fleet arrives to remove them, what happens to the ones who refuse to board the transports? Silence. I see. Chin dismissed the hologram. So it's acceptable when council species do it, but terrorism when humanity responds in kind. Thank you for clarifying. This is sophistry. Kelnatha's hood flared wide. You cannot seriously be suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything, High Arbiter. I'm stating facts. If the Krillian fleet attacks Verdant 3, humanity will consider it an act of war against our civilians. And we will respond according to our capabilities. She let that hang in the air for a moment. Now, I've studied Krillian biology extensively. Fascinating species. Your crystalline structure requires precise harmonic frequencies to maintain molecular cohesion. Disrupt those frequencies and, well... She made a gesture of something shattering. Ambassador Thex had gone completely colorless. The Vex Collective maintains its banking networks through quantum-entangled communication nodes. Very sophisticated. Very elegant. Also very vulnerable to targeted electromagnetic disruption at specific facilities. Chen's gaze shifted to Ambassador Crix. Especially the hub stations and undefended systems. Crix's mandibles had stopped clicking. The Marathi are energy beings, which makes you nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. But energy can be redirected, trapped, contained. Humanity has excellent experience with controlled fusion reactions. We've been accidentally creating and containing miniature stars for a century. Executor Ven's field had gone absolutely still. Chen continued her circuit of the chamber, naming species after species, detailing vulnerabilities with the cold precision of a surgeon describing incisions. Not threats, just information. Just facts about what humanity had learned, what humanity could do, what humanity would do if pushed. When she finished, the council chamber was silent again. But this time the silence felt different. Heavier. You would bring chaos to the galaxy, High Arbiter Kelnoth said quietly. 14,000 years of civilization, burned because of one colony world. No, High Arbiter. Chen's voice was firm. You would bring chaos to the galaxy. We're simply informing you of the consequences of your decisions. You can choose to respect our legitimate claim to Verdant 3, negotiate a genuine compromise with fair compensation, or allow us to purchase the Krillian claim at market rate. Any of these options maintains your civilization. And if we refuse? Then you teach humanity that the Council only respects force. That our laws, our rights, our lives don't matter because we're young and weak. Chen's expression hardened. And we will demonstrate that weak and defenseless are not the same thing. Ambassador Thex finally found her voice. You're bluffing. Your government would never authorize such actions. The economic sanctions alone would cripple Earth. Ambassador, 15,000 of our people are about to be made homeless by council decree. Sanctions? Chen laughed and it was bitter. You're threatening us with economic consequences while preparing to destroy our colony. You still don't understand. Understand what? That humanity spent most of its history fighting with sticks and stones because that's what we had. We built nuclear weapons 70 years after inventing powered flight. We reached the stars on rockets that were designed as weapons first, transportation second. Chen's voice dropped. We are very, very good at making do with what we have. And what we have now is just enough capability to make this entire galaxy ungovernable if you force. The emergency session of the Council convened 6 hours after Ambassador Chen's departure. The chamber, usually a place of measured debate and careful protocol, crackled with tension. High Arbiter Kelnoth didn't bother with the traditional opening ceremonies. We need to address the human situation immediately. Ambassador Thex, your government's response. The Krillian representative's crystalline form still hadn't regained its usual vibrant colors. The Krillian Accord is reviewing its position. Our intelligence services have confirmed that the humans weren't bluffing about our vulnerabilities. They've identified 17 critical harmonic resonance frequencies that could theoretically destabilize our molecular structure. Theoretically? Executor Ven's energy field pulsed with skepticism. They included mathematical proofs. Verified by our own scientists. Thex's tone was hollow. 3 of those frequencies can be generated using technology the humans already possess. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Ambassador Crix of the Vex Collective leaned forward in his pod. Our analysis division has been working through the night. The humans identified vulnerabilities in our quantum banking network that our own security specialists didn't know existed. They've been studying us. Extensively. How extensively? Kelnoth demanded. Every species on the Council. This came from Ambassador Thorn of the Draken Hierarchy, his voice unusually subdued. My government received a private communication an hour ago. The humans detailed 17 different methods to disrupt our breeding colonies. They know the orbital patterns of our nursery worlds. They know which systems have minimal defense fleets. They know, he stopped, his reptilian features contorting. They know things that should have been impossible for them to learn. They've been preparing for this, Executor Ven said slowly. For how long? Since they joined the Council. Ambassador Chen's voice came from the chamber entrance. She stood there without an escort, without ceremony, as if she'd simply walked through security. May I? Every translator in the room registered variants of shock, anger, and, from several species, something that might have been fear. This is a closed session, Kelnoth began, which is being broadcast to 47 species across 900 worlds. Chin gestured, and a holographic display showed real-time viewer counts. Humanity believes in transparency. We thought the galaxy should hear what comes next. You have no authority to. I have a message from Earth. Chen's voice cut through the High Arbiter's protest. From the United Nations Security Council, the Pan-Asian Alliance, the African Federation, the European Union, and representatives of every sovereign government on Earth. They've authorized me to present humanity's final terms. Terms? Ambassador Thex's laugh was crystalline and sharp. You don't dictate terms to the Council. Then let me be clear, these aren't demands. They're boundaries. Chen walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Humanity will not be displaced from Verdant 3. That is non-negotiable. But we understand the Council's concern about precedent, about appearing weak, about maintaining order. Then what are you proposing? Kelnoth asked warily. A new framework. One that accounts for species like humanity, young, aggressive, technologically limited but strategically capable. Chin pulled up a document that filled the air with dense legal text. We're calling it the Compact of Emerging Species. Ambassador Crix's mandibles clicked rapidly. What does that entail? Recognition that might does not equal right. That age does not equal authority. That every species, regardless of how long they've been traveling the stars, has the fundamental right to defend their people, their homes, their future. Chin highlighted sections of the document as she spoke. We propose a mediation system for territorial disputes. Independent arbitrators. Binding resolutions that take into account actual occupation, not just historical claims. That would overturn 14,000 years of precedent, Executor Ven said. Yes. Chin met the Maradi's energy field without flinching. It would. Because your precedent is built on a foundation that assumes every species that reaches the stars has learned the same lessons, shares the same values, plays by the same rules. Humanity is proof that assumption is false. You're asking us to rewrite galactic law because you refuse to follow it? Thex's colors were shifting toward angry orange. No, Ambassador. We're informing you that galactic law, as written, only works when every party believes they benefit from following it. When the law itself becomes a weapon used by the powerful against the weak stop respecting the law. Chen's voice hardened. And humanity has 50,000 years of experience being both weak and very, very dangerous when cornered. Ambassador Thorne spoke up, his voice thoughtful. The Draken hierarchy fought wars of extinction before we joined the Council. We learned that total victory often meant mutual destruction. Is that what you're threatening? Mutual destruction? No. Chin shook her head. We're threatening mutual chaos. Humanity doesn't have the capability to destroy the Council, but we have the capability to make governing impossible. To turn every trade route into a hazard. To make every diplomatic negotiation a potential trap. To ensure that the cost of suppressing us exceeds any possible benefit. She pulled up another display, this time showing human settlements scattered across a dozen systems. Small colonies, research stations, mining operations. None of them strategic. None of them wealthy. All of them filled with people who'd left Earth seeking new futures. There are 200,000 humans living off-world right now. In 10 years there will be 2 million. In 50 years 20 million. We're expanding faster than any species in recorded history because Earth is crowded, damaged, and desperate for room to breathe. Chin, let that sink in. You can accept us as partners now while we're still small enough to negotiate with. Or you can try to suppress us, and discover that humans are very good at breeding, hiding, and holding grudges. This is extortion, Kelnoth said flatly. This is reality, Chin countered. The Council exists because it's mutually beneficial. But for humanity right now the Council is a threat. You're threatening our colonies, our people, our future. All because we don't fit neatly into your 14,000-year-old system. So we're offering you a choice. Adapt the system or watch it collapse under the weight of a species that doesn't care about your rules. Silence fell again. But this time, Chin could see the calculations happening behind alien eyes. The risk assessments. The political considerations. The slow, grinding realization that humanity had backed them into a corner where every option led to problems. Finally, Executor Ven spoke. The Maradi Collective will support mediation talks. Not because of your threats, but because chaos serves no one. The Vex Collective agrees. Ambassador Crix's mandibles clicked slowly. The economic disruption alone would cost trillions. One by one, other ambassadors voiced cautious support. Not enthusiastic. Not happy. But pragmatic. Ambassador Thex remained silent until Kelnotha's gaze fell on her. The Krillian Accord will negotiate. But we will not simply abandon our claim to Verdant 3. We're not asking you to abandon it, Chin said. We're asking you to sell it. Fair market value, independently appraised, paid over 10 years with interest. You get compensation. We get our colony. The Council gets a framework for preventing this situation from recurring. And if we refuse? Chen's expression didn't change. Then in 30 days you'll attack Verdant 3. And the day after that, humanity will demonstrate exactly what total force doctrine means in practice. We've already selected our targets. We've already positioned our assets. We've already accepted that we might not survive what comes next, but neither will your civilization, not in its current form. She turned to face the entire council. I'm not here because Earth wants war. I'm here because Earth wants to be left alone to farm a planet nobody else cared about for 6 centuries. But if you force us to fight, we won't fight fair. We won't fight clean. We won't fight by your rules. We'll fight the way prey fights predators. With teeth and claws, Ambassador Thorne murmured. Even if it means dying. Especially if it means dying, Shin confirmed. Because death with dignity is preferable to life on our knees.